It's my honor to welcome and introduce three terrific speakers. I will ask them to tell us about themselves briefly, starting with a founding member of the RPO Association and a current advisory board member, Cory Cruz. Cory is the president of Orion Talent and a force of nature in the world of RPO. Cory, why don't you tell us briefly about yourself and maybe a superpower you might have?
Oh, you got me on the spot there, Lamise. I'm Cory Cruz, president of Orion Talent's RPO division. I'm here in Austin, Texas. I've been in the RPO business, managing engagements since the early 2000s. And then I've been a career talent acquisition guy, both on the executive search side, on the corporate side, and then working with VCs and PE firms in acquisitions and such. So glad to be here. I appreciate y'all being here. And my superpower, I would have to say, at 55 years old, my superpower right now is the ability to go downhill on a mountain bike faster than most 55-year-olds. So gravity is one of my superpowers.
Thank you, Cory. Would love to have you. I can't even go down the mountain when I was at 25, so that's definitely a superpower. Second, I'd like to welcome back Michelle Krier with ClearEdge Marketing. Michelle is also an advisory board member for the RPOA and actively participates in RPOA's thought leadership programs. We're happy to have her back. Michelle, can you tell us briefly about yourself and maybe something the audience doesn't know outside work?
Oh boy. Okay, sure. Thanks, Lamise. Hi, everyone. As Lamise said, my name is Michelle Creer. I'm with a company called ClearEdge Marketing. We are a full service marketing agency that serves companies in the talent and technology industries. And I've been in marketing my entire career. I've been with ClearEdge now for coming up on 10 years. And prior to this, I actually led marketing for one of the industry leading RPOs out there in the marketplace. So a lot of really good recruitment and talent experience in my background coupled with marketing itself. In terms of something, I don't know, others don't know about me outside of work. I guess one of the things I have two young boys, teenagers who are very much into sports, and is an effort to better connect with my older son. A couple of years ago, I volunteered to be the coach of his flag football team. And out of, I think it was 75 teams in the league, I was the only female coach that was in that league. I took my kids to the playoffs, which was great. We had a rough start, but we figured out a way to do it. And it's just something that gives me a lot of joy. I love to do things that they enjoy doing, which for them, it's mostly sports. So when I'm not at work, I'm typically either outside watching some type of sporting activity, or lately in the gym watching basketball as well. But I'm the biggest cheerleader. I'm very loud. So I don't know if I embarrass my kids a lot, but I'm out there cheering as loud as I can for them all the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. And last but not least, it's my honor to welcome Gregg with ClearlyRated. Eric is a first-time speaker on the RPO Leadership Forum and a great friend of the RPOA. Eric, welcome. In addition to being a cool dad and a lover of the outdoors, what else can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so I thank you, Lamise, for the introduction. Thrilled to be here. My team and I at ClearlyRated have been measuring the recruitment industry satisfaction for about 15 years. And as part of that, launched 2 years ago, Best of RPO, presented by Indeed and in partnership with the RPOA. Which is the first transparent metric to really identify the top RPO firms based on the satisfaction of their clients. So we're thrilled to be here. One thing that people don't necessarily know about me, it's like the opposite of a superpower, I guess, but in junior high, I was statistically speaking the slowest swimmer in the entire state of Montana. So that's something that many people don't know about me.
Fantastic. And with that, I do want to turn it to our discussion. We're running a little behind time. So Michelle, take it over, and I'm going to join you.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Lamise. And again, thanks everyone for joining us today. We're here to talk about 3 recruitment-related trends, and I have the pleasure of talking about the first one today, which is really related to recruitment marketing and employment branding. When COVID first landed in the US and things started shutting down, most companies went into communications overdrive. It became really critical for HR or recruiting and marketing to collaborate together in order to communicate with various stakeholders. And those messages were regular, transparent, and hopefully empathetic. It was in some ways really crisis communications. Then we settled into this really strange phase that some people call a new normal, which is, by the way, I don't love that phrase. But in this phase that we've been in, parents have been dealing with being childcare providers and teachers. People out of work were and still are dealing with trying to get through to unemployment offices and trying to make ends meet. And the rest of us are just muddling through day by day. Then you add in a number of events over the past 12 months that sparked conversations about things such as racial equality and social justice. And many companies quickly turned their attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and put out statements emphasizing their commitment to diversity and inclusion. And in some cases, that's where the conversation ended. But some companies proved that they're truly committed to walking the walk, not just talking the talk. And they followed up their statements with content, with discussion, and most importantly, with tangible action. So here we are in March 2021, almost a year to the date later, and vaccines are being administered. Schools and businesses are either opening or planning for opening up, and the playing field has really been leveled for a lot of companies out there. Companies who never entertained the idea of employees working remotely prior to March 2020 were, in essence, forced into that option. And that changes the job market pretty drastically. Companies who only recruited in a certain location or locations prior to COVID can now look for talent no matter where those candidates are located. And conversely, job seekers will have many more options if job location is no longer a factor. I heard such an interesting phrase the other day. The phrase is the great talent swap. And it was coined by recognized HR consultant, speaker, and author Lori Reutemann. If you don't follow her, I highly recommend it. Her theory about the great talent swap is that all people who have been content to just have a job during COVID, and she called it sheltering in job, will start leaving their current jobs for new jobs as things open up. And why is that? Well, people are reevaluating what they want to do with their lives, with their careers. COVID-19 has been a really unsettling time for a lot of us out there. And as they think about looking at new jobs, think about the cost of losing an employee. Some estimates it's 1.5 to 2 times that employee's annual salary. Think about that at scale. If there indeed is this great talent swap, doesn't even have to be people leaving one job for another. It could be leaving their job and joining the Peace Corps or moving to a small island somewhere, right? There's so many different scenarios and options for people now because of what's changed with COVID. So what can you do to offset the great talent swap? Well, hopefully you've analyzed your employer brand and your employee value proposition within the last 12 months. Does it demonstrate an emotional connection to your employees? Is diversity, equity, and inclusion woven into your EVP? Many employees, especially millennials, are looking for employers who make progress, not just pledges, on initiatives such as DEI. In fact, I thought this was really interesting. One Deloitte study found that almost 80% of young millennials say they'd be more motivated and committed at work if they felt their employer made a positive impact on society. So are you going back? Are you looking at those things in your own organization? They're going to have a big impact on recruiting and on talent acquisition and retaining talent this year. EVPs that hinge on empathy and actions will be the ones that candidates flock to. Your employer brand messaging needs to connect on an emotional level with your employees and candidates. And to take it a step further, it needs to be tailored to those different audiences as well. As I was sharing about the great talent swap, job seekers are going to have many, many more choices moving forward. And COVID will have brought to life the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to how companies treated and continue to treat their employees. So clearly communicating what your brand stands for through the lens of your employees and the values and beliefs that define how the brand behaves is really, really critical this year more than ever before. Because it's the emotional connection to a brand and the regular communication of that brand message through things such as social media posts, for example, that will encourage current employees to stay and will attract new talent. And before I turned it over here to Cory, as we were talking about, as we were prepping for our session, there's a lot of companies out there that focus so much on attracting talent. But what about retaining it as well? And I think, Cory, that's something you're going to address here as you move into the second recruitment trend that we're seeing in 2021.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. And you hit it right head on. I'm going to give some examples of some of the things we go through as an RPO provider, but what you see is what you get. And hopefully what you see is what you get when you go to work for a company, that there is consistency to the messaging, to the behavior. All of this lends itself to retention. As an RPO provider, we are asked to do a lot of different things. Conversations typically start out with a problem that needs to be solved. Problem is typically that we cannot keep up with the growth rate at our company for one reason or the other, whether it's expansion, whether it's turnover, whether it's evolving the company in a certain way, or releasing a product, whatever that challenge is. We get asked to come in and manage programs from the front end all the way through, in a lot of cases, onboarding. And what we find is clients are very forward thinking for the most part when it comes to, we need to do this. And I'll give you an example. Had a conversation with a client late last week, with a potential client, and they had a laundry list of items that they were looking to do that they barely touched the surface on. And these were modern recruitment things, such as we need to be text enabled. We need to align our employee value proposition with our social strategy. We need AI. We need to implement new technologies. I mean, the check boxes were just going off. And when we asked simple questions around the metrics, just common metrics of the blocking and tackling type functions, like their throughput ratios or their sourcing rate quality metrics and their internal SAT ratings and their net promoter scores, they really didn't have an answer to that. So what I'm getting at is we need to make sure, as recruitment process outsourcing providers, that we are helping clients move forward, and we're moving forward with them, and we're listening to the signals, so we're not stepping ahead. We need to make sure that we're not adapting faster than our clients in an engagement. And as an RPO provider, we have to be the experts. We have to culminate the data and the information across all of our client base, across the industry base, and we have to be able to put not only the best team on the field to go deliver for a client, but we have to make sure that we've reverse engineered a solution into their desired outcome, and that we execute on that. And most of the time, it starts way upstream with the basics, and that is employee engagement. That is making sure that, as Michelle said, that your employee value proposition and your messaging is very consistent with the experience that a potential employee would go through when they're looking at your company. Identifying influencers internally in your company that could help or hinder. Is your environment collaborative? Is it cooperative, or is it competitive? You have to have a plan to be able to govern your engagements with the client. And again, focusing on those things that are going to drive high yield to the outcome. And that would be engagement. That would be those things that would prep a candidate from the day you talk to them to 120 days after they start to be successful. We see a lot of time being spent on areas other than that. As I said, looking at process improvement, looking at, technology, looking at talent profiling and things like that. And, unless we get the basics down, the blocking and tackling, this other stuff will not be as impactful. So the way that we go about it is we have a methodology. I think any good RPO provider should have a solid methodology that allows scoping with target outcomes. It allows for the companies to work together to put together KPI measurements, KPI performances, risk mitigation plans, a spend plan to be fully transparent and ensure that there is value being driven in to the engagement, compliance, and then those other things, managing initiatives, providing strategic value, as we said, in things other than just the hand-to-hand combat when it comes to recruitment or sourcing or doing what I call the muscle moves, the things that require some sort of muscle. And the interesting thing, and we've seen this in industry, it ebbs and flows. The economy could influence it. It could be a company-driven market, a candidate-driven market. But in a candidate-driven market, such as now, it is very critical that there's efficiencies created, that there's little wastage, because we don't have time. You get one shot to engage a client. And one of the things that so compelled me about recruitment process outsourcing back in 2002, 2003 was the challenge of taking that executive recruitment experience or candidate experience that somebody would go through and applying that to corporations and doing that at volume and at scale. And now, with all the tools available to us, whether it's engagement tools or assessment tools or survey tools, we have data points that allow us to be very impactful when it comes to that. So to recap real quick, you got to know where you stand with your customers. You absolutely have to have a basis and a starting point, and you should be focusing on those things that are going to drive high yield. So taking a look at, are we treating these candidates right? What is our perception in the marketplace? Do we have a strategy for just handling people and interviewing people and doing it and making them feel like they're the only ones in the world? And we have partnered for years with Eric and his team at ClearlyRated to make sure that we have those data points necessary, that we're listening to our clients, that we're getting transparent data so we can drive continuous improvement into our organization, ultimately delivering the value to our customers. And Eric's going to talk a bit about the things that he's seeing that lend itself to that. Eric?
Yeah, Cory, what I love about what you said there is, what we try to get people to do: ask, analyze, and act, right? You have to ask the question to be able to understand what's going on. The analysis of that data is what really drives you strategically to the most important part, and honestly, the part that gets missed the most, which is actually taking action on that. The trend that I want to talk about is really, what we see being pulled forward, which is this age of service transparency being accelerated. And what that means is that we no longer, to Michelle's point earlier, around the talent and attracting the talent and what matters to them, it's no longer enough to say things that we do. We have to show people through our actions and also through amplifying the voices of the people that are there already to be able to take action on that. And the same thing goes for the RPOs and those that are working within the recruiting profession on the other side. If 2020 taught us one thing, it's that there's a whole bunch of things outside of our control. And if 2021 has one major trend, it's that people are trying to de-risk the chaos environment that they find themselves in due to 2020, many of those things outside of their control. And it's pretty fascinating if you look at research by Corporate Executive Board around how people buy business services. What they find is that the group size for people that are deciding on a outsourcing partner, for example, is bigger than it was 10 years ago. And that matters because what they also find in that research is that as the size of the group, the people influencing those decisions, as that gets larger, the willingness to take risk into the decision decreases. And so what we have to do now is, whether we're recruiting talent into our organization or whether we're trying to find ways to add new clients and run the recruiting process for them, we have to de-risk that decision. And it's especially important when you look at the impact that online ratings and reviews have on how people make those decisions. You will face a bigger headwind than you ever have before if you're trying to bring people onto your organization. And to Cory's point, you're not engaging them throughout. That is no longer something that you can hide, because that shows up in Glassdoor reviews, that shows up in Indeed reviews, that shows up on ClearlyRated.com with our ratings site there as well. So as you look at that, what you need to understand is, hey, what do we need to do to drive this engagement for both our clients and our talent? And how are we able to tell that story? And then if you're looking at partnering with someone, you want to partner with someone like Cory's organization or another organization that has taken the steps to say, hey, don't take my word for it. We're going to let our customers rate us, and we're going to be completely transparent about that. Not just the award, which to me, earning best of RPO is nice, but it's really actually more about the input that goes into that award and your ability to actually see that transparently within the marketplace. So I know we want to leave a couple minutes for some questions with Lamise, but what I'll leave people with is that in today's era of recruiting, we have to deliver a differentiated experience, and we also have to get credit for a differentiated experience. It's not enough to do just one or the other. We have to find a way to blend those two in a very credible, authentic manner. So Lamise, I'll turn it back to you. I know it's quick for all of us, but if there's a few questions, we'd love to have those questions. Or I know I speak for Cory and Michelle when I say that if you reach out to us directly, if we don't get to answer your question, please, we're more than happy to answer offline as well.
Very good. And I do want to welcome questions from the audience as well. If you have any questions, either the chat panel or if you want to put them in the Q&A, we're happy to direct them to our guest. I guess in summary, what I heard you all say is that recruiting candidates in this environment is going to be difficult. It's a candidate-driven environment. Employer branding and EVP continues to be important. Aligning your messaging with your action is important for engagement, as well as transparency and getting that voice from the customers or other players to show the service transparency for the organizations. A side question here. Are you finding, I know before COVID and with the labor market being so tight and now it's the opposite, there was a drive for driving, I guess, compensation and candidate compensation up, and salary is what I'm referring to as a drive recruit candidates. Are you seeing that yet? It's one of the indicators in the market for full employment and so forth. Are you seeing any of that currently in this environment, or is there the other factors that you mentioned are more important at this point?
I'll take a chop at that. We're absolutely seeing compensation pressures out there, and there's fierce competition in areas like manufacturing, tech, transportation, distribution, healthcare. Furious competition, and so we're seeing that not only a few extra bucks in comp needs to be present, but also the employee value proposition needs to be there. You need to tug on the heartstrings of your client, of your candidates. But yes,
Yeah,
we're in a competitive
just to
environment.
add on to what Cory was saying, it's about having that compelling message. So it's not just putting your job post out there somewhere and hoping somebody's going to click through on it and want to apply, but making sure you're positioning it in the right way, making it compelling for them to want to check out your organization, and knowing that people, as Eric was saying, are checking out ratings and review sites, making sure you're nurturing and paying time and attention to all of those places. What is your reputation online, and making sure that you are trying to paint an honest and as great of a picture as possible about your organization, so people are interested in learning more before or when they apply.
One last thing to add on that, and I know we have another question, but to Cory's point about it goes beyond just the compensation. We did a survey a few years back, and we asked the question. We asked people to put in the lowest salary that they would ever consider, annual salary, and they put in that number. And then the next question we said was, would you accept a position with a company that you were interested in and the job was a good fit if it was, and we put in their number minus 10%. So 10% lower than what they said the lowest absolute salary was. But then we added, if the company had a reputation as a great place to work, or if the company had strong online ratings about their employment. And what we found is 3 and 4, if one of those two things was present, was actually willing to accept a salary that was less than their lowest stated salary that they would consider. So the two go hand in hand. You will pay more if you're a crappy place to work. There's just no way, two ways around it. And you'll pay less if you're a great place to work.
And the question from the audience is relevant and probably for you more, Michelle. It's around recruitment marketing as that become more prominent in this environment, about the cost and how long it takes for employer branding and so forth to overhaul for an organization.
Yeah, it's a great question. And while I would say it's hard to pinpoint an exact timeline to it, what I will say is that there are things that impact it. And the biggest thing is just, are you actioning on it when you go through that, the refresh or the overhaul, whatever you want to call it. So it's one thing to go through the exercise, and it's a great and fantastic first step to evaluate and audit what you're doing and make sure it's aligned with who you truly are and what you truly offer. But then it's about getting those messages out to the marketplace. And that's where you're going to see, from my perspective, really the most impact. So are your candidate recruitment messages, are your social posts, are your descriptions of your company and all the things you post on the review sites, are those accurate and up to date? We see so many times that companies go through that effort, whether it's their main company, I'm going to call it your main company brand, or your employer brand, and then they fail to action on it. They fail to put it into practice. And that's when you're not seeing any results then. So being able to update all of your different profiles online, making sure you're engaging and amplifying your internal brand ambassadors and tapping into them and making it easy for them to carry the messages forward. That's when you're going to start to see a real impact, hopefully on the quality of applicants that are coming through, increase in reviews that you're getting out there, increase in your own internal employee satisfaction surveys, things like that.
It's also important to ask yourself this question: how yoked is my corporate marketing department with my TA or my HR department?
Yeah.
Very good. So Excellent conversation. And I want to thank our audience for their participation and engagement today. We have a great endorsement in the chat for our guests as well. And I really appreciate that and thank all participants. This webinar is 30 minutes, so we are going to wrap up here shortly. But before we do, I do want to share a few upcoming events from the association here. And let me just share my screen. We are a member-driven organization serving the entire RPO ecosystem and striving to be the place to go for RPO. Our mission at the RPOA is to educate the marketplace about RPO, and we offer thought leadership in collaboration with our wonderful partners. We do host 2 active blogs. We produce a monthly newsletter and offer many resources as well as webinar programs. There are 2 webinar programs that the association offers. One of them is the RPO Leadership Forum, which is what you're attending today. This program is scheduled for the second Tuesday of each month at noon Eastern Time. So each month we host 1 or 2 webinars, each 30 minutes on a topic of interest, either to RPO providers or talent acquisition and HR leaders. Some of the upcoming events in April, we have 2 webinars actually. On April 20th, we have Pam Verhoff, President of Advanced RPO, will be facilitating a conversation with RPO delivery leaders to help talent and HR leaders understand the role of RPO in addressing the complexities of high volume hiring. And then we have Andrew Brown, Head of Outsourcing Partners at Cornerstone On Demand. He will speak to RPOs and recruiting providers about new shifts by clients into total talent solutions and other outsourcing solutions, and how technology can support recruiting providers in making this shift as well. May 18th, we have Joe Mater, VP of Marketing at Brazen. He will explain how to build a hybrid recruiting approach with the power of virtual hiring events. So as we see post-COVID, we're expecting to see virtual events to continue, and Joe will be speaking along these lines there. In June, on June 1st, we have a webinar that is part of the RPOA expert panel. This is the other webinar program that we offer, and we are inviting a few talent acquisition experts to speak about global RPO. That is new trends, challenges, and shifts in recruiting in LATAM and EMEA, APAC, and so forth. Now you can find all these webinars on demand on the RPOA website at the RPO Academy. And if you are a recruiting provider or supporting of RPO providers and you're interested in presenting at RPOA webinars, we would love to hear from you. So I invite you to reach out to me directly, and I would love to hear from you and talk about opportunities. With that, I do want to thank our participants. I do want to thank our speakers, Cory Cruz, Michelle Krier, Eric, Gregg. Thank you so much for being part of this program and sharing your new trends and insights with our participants. Eric, I hope you enjoyed the experience with our webinar today. Would love to see you all next time. Thank you to our audience. Have a great day, everyone, and look forward to seeing you in a future RPOA webinar.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Lamise.